So let me give you a brief background on what we're doing here. Uh, Lance Luke, that's me. I'm the National Building Expert. We have put together a series of webinars called Ask the Building Expert series. And why did we do this? Well, because we wanted to do this to provide valuable information to help building owners, condo associations, property managers, homeowners, condo owners, realtors, and more. So a very important subject, fire, life safety, and high-rise buildings. And by the way, this is probably my 45th webinar that I'm giving this year. Wanted to let you know that my partner is Martin Pea, who's actually the production manager helping do all the IT backend stuff with Zoom, Facebook, all that stuff. So you might not hear from him until later at the end when he'll look at the questions and let me know what they are, because I'm not actually on Facebook looking at my Facebook feed. I'm trying to give this webinar presentation. So fire, life safety, and high-rise buildings. Let's take it from the beginning. Not the beginning of time, but what is the history of fire, life safety evaluations? And mainly I'm going to be talking about what happened in Honolulu. I know there's people that are on this webinar that are from other parts of the United States, not from Hawaii, but just give you a brief little background on what happened in Honolulu. And then after that, I'll go into the rest of the information that would apply to any city or state throughout the United States and even countries around the world. So basically, talk a little bit about what happened in Honolulu. The history of the life safety evaluation stemmed from this major fire. The biggest residential fire in Honolulu happened in 2017 in a building called Marco Polo. And if you haven't been familiar with that, it was pretty huge, and about 5 people died in the fire. And I'll let you know later the problems associated with the safety in the building. Okay, so after the fire in 2017, the mayor of the city and county of Honolulu met with the fire department, and they came up with a plan basically to require all high-rise buildings in Honolulu to be retrofitted with fire sprinkler systems, even if the building, when it was built, didn't have fire sprinklers. So it was a mandate to require these buildings to now install fire sprinklers in their building. And there was a lot of support from the building industry and engineers who actually do this kind of work, and of course the fire department. There was pushback with condo owners, boards, property managers, saying that the costs of these fire sprinkler systems are going to be too great and people can't afford to pay for it. Okay, so after the fire, there was a council that was put together by the fire department with the city council and the mayor, and it was a committee called the Residential Fire Safety Advisory Committee. And I was on that committee in the building code section. And also, just to give you a brief background, on the day of the Marco Polo fire, I was there. I was there weeks after that and months after that. And so I kind of have a good idea of what happened. I also inspected the building previous to the fire. And, so I have a lot of information that I can share. So that's the history in Honolulu. Okay, so that's how this whole thing came to be. Now, there was a requirement to have the life safety evaluations completed 2 years ago, but they kept pushing it further in the future because not many condos were in compliance and you needed more time. Okay, so that's basically where we are. Why are inspections needed? Inspections are needed because the reliance on each condo building or rental building that needs fire sprinklers that don't have one, they weren't really paying attention to that issue, and it could be a money thing too. But inspections are very important because it could prevent fires from happening, and also could prevent, if there is a fire, it could prevent loss of life or injury. Okay, so the photo that you see on the left is the actual picture of Marco Polo, and the photo on the right, I'm standing with a news reporter, KHON2 News, in front of the Marco Polo building where I was interviewed. Okay, so let's talk about fire sprinkler systems. Fire sprinkler systems are actually required in certain parts of a building. In the 70s, they were required only in if you have a high-rise building, a trash chute, or your parking, underground parking. It was not required in the building, and this is like in the 60s and 70s. Now, before I continue, I mentioned before sprinklers are required in high-rise buildings, but you may ask, what is a high-rise building? And most people think that a high-rise building is a building that's 40 stories high. You know, that's a high-rise. But the fact of the matter is, by building code, a high-rise building is considered a building that has a height of 75 feet and higher. And you may ask, 75 feet? How did the code people come up with that criteria? Now, one story or one floor of a building is about 8 to 10 feet. Okay, so let's say a normal floor of a building is 10 feet. So 70 feet or 80 feet, you're only talking about 7 or 8 story building. But by building code, that's considered a high-rise building. Okay, so why did the 75 feet come into play? Because that's the length or height that the fire department ladder can reach your building. So if you have a 10-story building and the fire department comes with their long ladder, the ladder is not going to reach 10 stories high. So that's why they say if the fire department ladder cannot reach up to that floor, the higher floors, the whole building needs to be fire sprinklered. So that's how this whole thing came to be. Now, if you go into a store, warehouse, restaurant, and you look in the ceiling, you might see these piping and these sprinkler heads. Okay, then you know that the building has fire sprinklers. If you go into a hotel, you're on vacation, look around and look for those sprinkler heads. Okay. So here's some photos of an actual fire sprinkler head that got set off and water shooting out of it. Now, you may ask, well, what is the difference between as far as timing? If the fire department station, the fire station was right next to our high-rise building, why would I need fire sprinklers? Because they're right next door. Okay. But the fact of the matter is, if you have a sprinkler system in your building and there's a fire and that sprinkler goes off and water starts putting the fire out, that's a lot faster than the fire department getting into their truck, driving to your building next door and climbing up the stairs to put your fire out. That may take 10 minutes, 20 minutes or so. The fire sprinkler, once it's set off, it's right away. It's in within minutes. So that's why fire sprinklers are needed. And don't count on the fire department to save you if your building doesn't have fire sprinklers. So that's why everyone on the firefighting arena is saying we support fire sprinklers in high-rise buildings. Okay, now, how many buildings in Honolulu, high-rise buildings, do not have fire sprinklers? Okay, so there was about, and here's a photo of a lot of buildings, and not all of these buildings have fire sprinklers. Some of them do, but this is just a representative of. We have a lot of high-rise buildings in Honolulu, thousands of buildings. Now, throughout the United States, and for those of you who are on Zoom that are from California or other states, the cities that have high-rise buildings without sprinkler systems are San Francisco, LA, Chicago, New York, Dallas, San Antonio, Texas, San Jose, San Diego, Philadelphia. And I've been to most of these cities and actually saw high-rise buildings with no fire sprinklers. So it's not only a problem in Honolulu, it's a problem throughout the whole United States with older buildings that are 8 floors and above without sprinkler systems. Okay, so in Honolulu, we have about 340 buildings, older buildings that do not have fire sprinkler systems. And why? Because at the time the building was built, it was not required by code. And a lot of people did not want to upgrade because of the high cost. So let's talk about fire life safety components. What are the components that fall under the fire life safety category? Okay, one of the components is wet and dry standpipes. What those are is big pipes that go up the building, and some of them have water in it, standing water, and some do not. Now, a wet standpipe is just what it says. There's water in it all the time, and that's why it's called a wet standpipe. And normally fire hoses that are in the building, if your building has one, it's connected to that wet standpipe. So if you turn on the valve, water comes out of the fire hose. Okay. Now, a dry standpipe does not have any water in it, and the dry standpipe system is for the fire department to use. So let's say you have a fire in the building, the fire truck would come, they would look at the nearest fire hydrant, hook up to the hydrant with their hose. From the fire hydrant, they pump water into that dry standpipe, and water is pumped through the building. So when the water goes through the building in the dry standpipe, it then becomes a wet standpipe, and that's what the firefighters use to put the fire out. Okay, so you have also the fire hoses, as I mentioned, and then you have fire extinguishers. So that's part of a life safety component. What other things comprise the life safety component category, you may ask? And fire alarm systems and smoke detectors and smoke alarms. Now, a fire alarm system, as you know, is a series of pull stations and bells. And you may have, if you're a smaller building, you may have one bell or you may have 2 bells per floor. The objective is when someone pulls the alarm, the pull station, the bells go off. Now, in older apartment buildings and some condos that I've inspected, they did a test of the bells, and some of the bells did not work, or some of the bells were not loud enough. So if you're in a condo and you're in the bathroom and the alarm goes off, you're not able to hear it. So that's why an upgrade of a fire alarm system would actually do that. They test the sound of the bells, how loud it is. And the upgrade today is they have uh, voice activated and uh, sight activated, where there's a flashing light that goes on for people who can't hear. Okay, now talking about smoke detector and smoke alarm, does anybody know the difference between the two? And here's where it gets pretty interesting. I take a poll, and even the uh, stores that sell these devices, of course, most of them comes from China. They're not labeled correctly. It says smoke detector, and that's the one that you buy and you put the battery in and put it on the ceiling or on the wall in your house. Okay, that's not a smoke detector. Okay, it's actually a smoke alarm. And here's the difference: a smoke alarm is a single unit, a single device, and when it sets off, only that alarm goes on, goes, sounds. Now, a smoke detector is a series of these devices connected. So when one goes is alarmed, the other ones do the same thing. So let's say you have a smoke detector in a high-rise building. When that detector goes off, okay, other detectors downstream will go off also. A fire alarm, it's just you only hear it in one unit. Okay, so that's the big difference. Now let's talk about fire life safety upgrades. Okay, let's say you have an older building, and by the way, not only if you're a condo owner, a board member, property manager, but if you're a realtor, a real estate agent you're selling a condo building, or you're a buyer of a condo, you want to look to buy a condo, or even if you're a seller, say, the person that's buying the condo unit and the realtor representing the buyer, it would be good to find out whether the condo unit that you're selling in the building has a fire sprinkler system or not. I mean, I think that's an important factor. And a lot of times, if it doesn't, the buyers turn away and say, I don't want to buy in a building that does not have a fire sprinkler system in it. So let's talk about some upgrades. You have an existing high-rise building. You do not have a fire sprinkler system. Okay, it would be best to have one installed. Now, if you do have a fire sprinkler system, the upgrade would be you have to have the sprinkler system inspected. And if you look at the images that I have here, you have sometimes a condition where I see the fire sprinkler head is so corroded because we have a lot of salt air in Hawaii, and it's made out of metal and it starts corroding. Now, guess what? If there's so much corrosion on it, it's not going to work. Okay, so if there's a fire, it's not going to spray water. It's just not going to do anything. Then the other thing to be concerned with is if you have a sprinkler head and you're renovating or your unit or you're painting the common areas, do not paint the sprinkler heads. Sometimes they miss, or they're spraying the ceiling and they spray the head. Now, if paint gets clogged in the sprinkler head, guess what? It's not going to work. Okay, so that's just some tidbit information for you to share. Also, upgrade your fire alarm system. Some fire alarm systems are so old, they don't work properly, ancient. I think if your fire alarm system is 35 years, 40 years old, it's time for an upgrade. No matter if your fire alarm company comes in and services it and tests it and it still works, it's probably aging and one day it may not work. Okay, so it's best to check the reserve study and follow that. Also, fire exit signage is important. You have fire exit stairways and you got to have proper signage. If there's a fire and you don't have fire exit shown on the door, you can't expect people to know that that's the door that you go through, to get out of the building. So you have to have the signage there and also proper lighting. And make sure you have floor numbers on every floor, and it would be on the doors of your fire exit stairways. Okay, it's not only for the people to know what floor they're on, it's for the firefighters to know what floor they're on also. What else can we talk about? Well, we can talk about some more upgrading, like emergency lighting. Make sure all the lights work properly, and smoke alarms are tested. Smoke alarms are in every single condo unit, and I know it's harder to enforce because the smoke alarms are in each unit, and normally the property managers don't go into each unit and look to see if there is an alarm. If there is it working? But believe it or not, it's required by code to have smoke alarms. And even the landlord tenant code requires that also. And then smoke detectors, make sure you have enough of them and make sure they work. Now, what happens in a building where you have emergency lighting and there's a power outage? Okay, do you have backup batteries? Do you have a backup system? I know older buildings that do not have an emergency generator. So guess what? If there's a power outage, everything goes out. Your emergency lighting is not on in your fire exit stairways. Your alarm system may not be working if the battery backup is not working properly, and your elevators aren't working. So it would be good if your high-rise building doesn't have a emergency generator to take steps to have one put in, because it could be very helpful during an emergency. You don't know when the power is going to be out. Sometimes the power's out 6 hours, 12 hours, and it may not be too bad. But what happens like after hurricane, where some buildings didn't have power for a whole week? Then what do you do? Okay, also, you got to be cognizant of the fact that there may be elderly people living in the building, and they may need the electricity to power their oxygen tank or whatever else they need for life safety. Okay, that's important too. What are some other fire life safety upgrades? You have fire exit doors. Okay, fire exit doors in common areas, in the hallways. Make sure that the doors work, they're not corroded. You have panic hardware. What is panic hardware? Panic hardware is you don't need a key and you don't need to turn the knob. You just push on the little bar and the door opens. Okay, and normally these are for big corridors, big meeting rooms, and places like that. If you have a common area corridor or hallway, you have a one exit door with a handle, and that's fine. And by the way, all of these doors are equipped with self-closing and latching mechanisms. What that means is that when you open the door closes automatically by itself after you leave. You don't open the door and the door stays open, because these are fire rated doors. And make sure that there's signage. If you look at the image on the left with the two red doors, how do we know what kind of doors these are? There's no sign. There should be an exit sign. Okay, like the image on the right, there's a nice door there with an exit sign. Now, here's something to consider. If the door is too hard to open, or it's so corroded or it's rusty, and maybe through shifting, the door is not fully plumb, and you have to kind of use your body to open the door or close it, that's not a proper working fire door. Okay. So corrosion, rust on the bottom of the door where there's holes and all that, that is not a legal fire door either. Okay, because there's holes in it. Here's something very interesting. Most people do not know that in a condo building or apartment building, your front unit entry door is considered a fire door. And when the door is considered a fire door, it cannot have any louvers in it. It has to be solid. So if you look at the image on the left, that's a front unit entry door to a condo, and there's louvers. Why is there louvers? Well, for ventilation. But guess what? That's not allowed by code. You cannot have any louvers. If you have a screen door and it gets hot and you leave your entry door open and you have the screen there for ventilation, that's not allowed either. Okay. And then if you look at the image on the right, that fire door was propped open with a doorstop for ventilation. That's illegal. Okay. By fire code, you cannot have a unit entry door that's a fire rated door propped open, or have louvers in it, or cut a hole in it for your pet or things like that. Okay, so that's very important. By the way, Marco Polo had some of these conditions. Some other fire life safety upgrades. Let's talk about firewall. If you look at the image on the left, it's of two separate condo units or two separate apartments, and the wall separating the two units is considered a firewall. It has to be properly fire rated, so that if a fire starts in one unit, it doesn't spread to the other unit, and the next thing you know, your whole building is on fire. Okay, so the firewall is usually made out of concrete, hollow tile, or it could be fire rated drywall. And the idea on the design is you make compartments, and the compartments are single units where if a fire occurred in one, it doesn't spread to the other unit, either next door or above or below. Okay, now talking about above or below, there's what's called fire stopping. So in every building, you have floor and ceiling penetrations through the concrete. And why? Because you have piping, you have drain piping, you have supply piping to carry water, you have electrical conduits, you have storm drain piping, and so forth. So what happens when the pipe is going through the ceiling or floor and there's a hole there where the penetration is? Okay, if you don't have it sealed, that's a way for the fire or smoke to get through to other units in the building. Okay, so the material used to fill or patch the holes is called fire stopping, and the method by which to seal the holes is also called fire stopping. The material is called fire stopping also, or fire stopping material. Okay, now in Marco Polo, they didn't have fire stopping. There were holes there, and naturally, if your one unit's on fire, it could just spread down on the top, down below to the bottom, and then throughout the whole building. Not only the flames, but smoke, and a lot of times smoke is what kills people, not the actual fire. So in concert with that, there's also fire stopping. You know, if you look at a condo building and you're looking at the windows, okay? So the windows are, that wall there is called a window wall. So that window wall system that's connected to the floors of each unit there's a space there that needs to be fire stop also, and that's called fire safing. Now, in the older buildings, they had a window wall system where you had a wall on the bottom and you had like a window on the top. Now, if you look at how high-rise buildings are built today, it's mainly all glass, right? There's no concrete wall or anything. And that's called a curtain wall system, where floor to ceiling, it's a whole window. And that's called a curtain wall, because your whole wall is basically a window. Now, the same situation where that window meets up with the floor, that hole, that space there needs to be fire stopped. And so I've seen older buildings where there was nothing there. It was just air, or they stuffed it with newspaper. And is newspaper a good material? No, it's not approved. So in a bunch of construction defect cases, those things came up. The fire safing was not done properly, or wasn't there. Fire stopping wasn't there, things like that. So my motto and your motto too is safety first in all buildings. Safety first starts here. Why? Because we want to be able to protect lives. Now, here's some recommended actions you can take. Take immediate action to upgrade and do not wait. Okay. And I fully realize that it costs a lot to upgrade, and a lot of condos in their reserve study, I would say, I said a lot, but probably every single condo that had a reserve study done for a high-rise building did not have a line item for new fire sprinkler system, if those condos did not have one. It just came about, so no one was prepared for that. And if you're not prepared, it's not in your reserve study, you don't have that kind of money lying around to now all of a sudden, oh, I think we need to install fire sprinkler system. Well, how are we going to pay for it, right? So the problem is financial. How do you pay for it? How does a condo board pay for a major component that they never had the money for in the first place? Well, how are these condos paying for concrete spalling repair, elevator upgrades, fixing their roof, changing out the cast iron piping? If they don't have money, they're going to have to raise the money either by getting a loan or doing a special assessment or something like that. It's not a fun situation to be in. So basically, that's my whole webinar. And before I take any questions, I want to let you know upcoming webinars that were planned for the future. Topics are building safety, preventive maintenance, and I want to open it up to you guys. If you have any ideas you want me to talk about for future webinars, please email me, give me a call, or contact us in some way and give us suggestions, because we're open. Every webinar we do is created brand new from scratch. And so we're always open to ideas on interesting subjects. And I've gotten probably 30 topics, and we need more. I want to know what topics you're interested in that are important to you. So, we're open to taking ideas. Before I take the Q&A section too, I also want to thank you for tuning in if you're on Zoom or whether you're on Facebook Live, because this is an important subject to me and I think to you. By the way, just spread the word. If you're interested if you have friends or colleagues or other people who couldn't attend for whatever reason, we're going to have this webinar recorded and online, so you can go to our website and actually watch it on demand when you feel like it. So the website is askbuildingexpert.now.site, and you can, you can register for future webinars. Even if you can't make it, register anyway, because then the system that we have will capture your email, and when the webinar is finished, we'll be able to send you the link to watch the webinar. Okay, and then, if you have questions after watching the on-demand webinars, feel free to email us or give us a call. I'm pretty sure we have, yep, right here on the screen, we have our email address, lanceluke@hawaiibuildingexpert.com. We have our phone number, and we have our website. So once again, appreciate you guys attending. And now I'm here. Now is your time to ask the building expert whatever questions you have pertaining to this subject. And if you have questions that do not pertain to this subject, if we have time, we'll be happy to answer those questions as well. So let me turn it over to Martin, and he can let me know if there's any questions or comments on Zoom, as well as on the Facebook Live platform. So Martin, time to wake up.
Okay, I'm awake. I'm awake.
Oh,
I'm here.
okay, good.
Yeah, and I just wanted to share a comment. Yeah, I know your presentation is about building owners and helping them, but I just want to share my experience, and it's actually just happened in the last week. And what you're sharing is really important for travelers that they don't realize, because my wife and I have traveled so many years in a retirement all around the world. One of the things as a traveler that you need to be aware of is this life safety information in your when you're traveling in the hotels and places that you stay. Because I mean, just this past week we did a little staycation, but the habit that I've gotten into that I think all travelers staying in hotels need to be aware of is knowing where, like you said, where the exits are, knowing where the sprinklers are, if there's any kind of emergency, in the hotel that you're staying, because I mean, it's critical to know how to get out of the place if there is a fire or some kind of emergency. So for myself and my family, we always look for, as part of checking in on our floor, in our room, we look for where's the exits and where's all the safety systems, so that you'll be ready if an emergency comes up. And we've heard about those kind of stories in these resorts where they got the fires and that kind of stuff, and it's just a good information. So I want to thank you personally, as a friend and as a professional. This is valuable information in so many different ways. So anyway, I'm going to get to this.
Thanks. Let me tag on to that. I'm glad you brought that up, because I know we travel a lot. My wife and I like to travel, so we've been through to many countries and stayed at different hotels also throughout the United States. And one of the first things I do when I'm walking from the lobby to the hotel room is look around at the signage and try to plan and get familiar with the fire exit. So and it has to be posted, the signage. So when you're in your room, whatever floor you're on, there has to be a sign saying, it's almost like you are here, arrows pointing to how you exit in case of a fire. And I've been in hotels. I'm kind of a snoop, because I like to inspect. So even if I'm a hotel guest, I'm walking around, going down the stairways, looking at stuff, just because that's what I like to do. And in some cases, there were major hotels, and I don't want to mention names, major hotels where they had construction going on. And in the fire exit stairways, they had stored lumber, materials, maintenance workers had a shopping cart full of cleaning supplies in the fire exit stairwell. And that's not allowed. By code, you cannot block, you cannot have any storage stuff in the fire exit stairwells. Why? For obvious reasons. If there's a fire and people need to go up and down, you can't have stuff blocking the way. So I also look at where in the hotel room where the smoke detectors are and see if they're even working. And then, little straying away from the topic, I actually inspect the floor and all the plumbing fixtures. I actually look under the sink to see if there's a leak and all that. And even you know, 5-star hotels have leaks and they may not know about it. So that's just, and my wife's like, do whatever you want. And so it's fun for me. And by the way, I take pictures of all that stuff and I post it on Facebook. And in the beginning, I used to not say the name, but then now I don't care. I just take a picture of the name of the hotel and then I put pictures of all this bad stuff just so that they know. And hopefully they can fix the problems. And then, when I check out, I talk to the manager, say, oh, by the way, there's things that I think you should improve on. I'm a national building inspector. And they go, oh, okay, we'll follow up on it, sir. So anyway, thanks for that comment. I know I
yeah.
kind of went off a little, but let's take some questions.
Okay, let me give you the first one here. It says, do you know how many buildings in Honolulu have opted in for fire sprinklers so far?
Yeah, according to my research, so far, 2 of them. Okay, and let me, I'm trying to look at my notes here. So two of the buildings that I'm aware of out of 340 have decided to install fire sprinklers. Okay, not a good number. Okay, but 2 is better than 0. And just to let you guys know, so far, based on the latest Honolulu Fire Department survey, out of the 340 buildings that were required to have their fire life safety evaluation done, 102 buildings have completed. And they were supposed to have completed it like last year. So out of 102, compared to 340, that's not a good number. That's less than 1/3 of the buildings have complied with the ordinance to have the fire life safety survey completed. And then out of the 102 buildings that had their evaluations done, only 6 of the buildings passed. So what does that tell you? That tells you that the majority of the buildings did not pass, and we have a serious problem here with our life safety situation. So that's just coming from me. If you need further information, you can check with your city council member or the Honolulu Fire Department.
Okay,
So we
Lance,
have other
thank you.
questions.
Yep, get a few more here. Just thank you for presenting this important webinar. Great. I have 2 questions. What is the average cost of fire sprinklers for a condo building? And what is the estimated cost of upgrading a fire alarm system?
You have, let me just give you an estimated range on buildings that I have looked at and that are working on. The cost of a fire sprinkler system is about $15,000 to $18,000 per unit. And that's just a range because every building is different. Yeah, and it's not, keep in mind that it's not only putting piping in the building and then into the units. It's the piping, it's a fire sprinkler heads, it's a pump that's needed, a separate board of water meter for that. And there's a lot of factors that go into, designing the whole system. If you hire an engineer to design a system, which you need to, you may be talking $50,000, $75,000. So the cost is not cheap. Now, for a fire alarm system, if you take a 17-story building that has maybe 130 to 150 units, the prices that we're looking at is about $500 to $750,000 to upgrade the fire alarm system. It depends on the condition of the system and then other components that are needed to upgrade. So that's just a ballpark figure. So as you can see, it's not cheap. If you have a condo building and you multiply $15,000 per unit, it's millions of dollars for a fire sprinkler system. So that's the reason why a lot of condos have decided to opt out, because it's too costly. Now, be aware that if a condo building opts out, they cannot just arbitrarily say, we're not going to install fire sprinklers. Okay, there's certain things that they got to do. They actually have to post signage in a conspicuous area of the building, maybe the lobby, that says our building does not have fire sprinklers, right? And they have to let the management company know, so that if potential buyers are looking at turning an offer in, they're aware that there's no fire sprinklers. And that's just what the law says. And also, there's compliance with other things that need to be done. For instance, if they even decide to put fire sprinklers, they still have to upgrade the fire alarm system if the system's not working. Okay, so it's just a give and take kind of situation. We're still going through this whole process, and definitely there's going to be a lot of appeals to the city saying, we're XYZ building, we need more time to get our survey done, or we had our survey done, we didn't pass, we need more time to, fix all these things, upgrade our fire alarm system, do fire stopping and all that. There's no way in Honolulu that there's enough contractors to do the work to upgrade systems for 340 buildings within 3 years' time. That's not going to happen. So we'll see. All right, I'm enjoying the question. So we have others.
Oh yeah, we have one that came up on Facebook Live, so I'll hop over to that right now. This is a question from Mark. It says, does the fire code require exit stairwells to be pressurized in high rises? And if so, is there a testing protocol for that?
Interesting question. The answer is no and yes. It depends the age of the building and the design. Newer buildings today, like all the ones in Kaka'ako that they're building, all are designed with that type of system. The older buildings before that, nothing is pressure-wise. You have a hallway with airflow, and that was the old system, which works. But today's is getting so technical. Basically, you have a separate air system in the hallway that's connected to the building. So interesting question, but it all depends on the type of building. The newer buildings, yes, they have that system. They even have pressurized stairway systems in the fire exit stairways. So it's just the buildings today are getting more and more complicated. And that's why if you look at a reserve study for an older building, you may have 100 components. If you do look at a reserve study for a building in Kaka'ako that they're doing now, you may have 300 something components. So there's a big difference.
Oh, thanks, Lance. We got another one here on Facebook Live. I'll try to pass on to you. This is from Susan, who got a little bit late with us, but it says, the question is, does the new building do new buildings being built now require a mandatory fire sprinklers, or is it an option?
Thank you for the question. There's no option. All the buildings now are required to have fire sprinkler systems. So in the design of all these new buildings, they're designing the fire sprinkler systems into the building, and it's cheaper, okay, to put a sprinkler system in on a new building than it does a retrofit. Why? Because you have a building when you're building new and you already know that these fire sprinkler piping is going in to the common area hallways, it's going into the building, each units and all that. Now, an older building that doesn't have a fire sprinkler system, the building is already built. Guess what? Now you got to core through walls, core through floors, core through ceilings, concrete, jackhammering, and if the building has drywall and you got to run your sprinklers there, if your drywall has asbestos or lead paint, now you have a hazmat issue. So that could be the reason why the fire stopping and fire sprinkling of older buildings are so expensive, because you have all these things to consider. And it's specialized. You can't just hire a general contractor and say, go drill holes all everywhere so we can run our piping. I mean, it's almost an art and a science together. Just like doing a repiping of your old cast iron piping in a high-rise building. I mean, it's not easy. You got hazmat issues, you got piping issues, fire stopping and all that. So it's just, people have to understand the nature of the beast, that's what it is, and that's why it costs so much. So it's fun. I'm actually enjoying these questions because they're very good questions.
Okay, Lance, thanks. I got a couple more that came in earlier. This one's, my 25-story building does not have fire sprinklers and does not have an emergency generator. I know our building does not want fire sprinklers, but do we need an emergency generator?
Well, I would say you need fire sprinklers, but that's not for me to judge. But if you're on the board or you talk to the board, just say, hey, you know, this building expert guy said that we need fire sprinklers. And they might say, well, okay, but we have no money. Now what do we do? Okay, so I always opt on the life safety, whatever's the highest bar that we can use for fire life safety without concern about the money. That's what, you know, what I would support. Now on the emergency generator, I don't know where your building is, but I would say if your building is that tall and you don't have an emergency generator, the question is, what happens when there's a power outage? You don't have elevators that work. You don't have lighting that works. You don't have a lot of stuff that works. Now, on a high-rise building, for those of you that do not understand how plumbing works, how are you going to get water to your 38th floor unit? How do you get water? There's a pump, right? There's booster pumps. There's some buildings are split. You got a low rise, you got a high rise pump. Now, when there's a power outage, guess what? The pumps work on electricity. None of those pumps work. So you're up there with no water. Okay, so that's why I always say emergency generator is good. Now, in a huge building, you cannot, I mean, you could, but you wouldn't want to because of the cost, have a huge emergency generator where it can power your whole building, water system and all that in case of a power outage. It's too costly. So what you do is you design one emergency generator and it powers one elevator and your emergency lighting, and that's enough. You can't, you know, there has to be sacrifices with water and other things. So you're not, in a power outage, you're not going to have any electricity in your unit per se, but you're going to have your elevator working and your emergency lighting. Okay, so that's why it's good practice to know who's in your building, who needs help. Okay, in case of a fire, how many people need help? Elderly, to evacuate because they have no mobility, where they can't go on your own. Someone has to help them. Likewise, if you know who's in the building that is on oxygen and needs oxygen, and that's running on electrical. It's good to know that because, you know, that person would need help, because if the power outage lasts for several days and they don't have a backup system for your, you know, oxygen machine, then that's not very good either. So just, you know, be aware of these things. We got other questions?
Yes, Lance, I have one more here. I don't see any others coming in on the other media, but yeah, I have one more here. It says, I am going to build a new house next year. It's a house question. Do you know what the cost is to install a fire sprinkler system for a new house?
For a new house, depending on the square footage and how big the house is, you may be looking at maybe $15,000 to $40,000. But if you want to do that, and I support that, and in some states on the mainland, they actually have mandatory fire sprinkler requirement for a single family house. Okay, so we're not there yet, although there's a push because it's a good idea. So it's sort of like you have a house and the plumber is running plumbing pipes, you know, to your kitchen and your bathroom and your laundry. Okay, the fire sprinkler is similar, where you're running plumbing pipes, but not only to your bathrooms and laundry and kitchen, running piping throughout your whole house, your living room, dining room, your great room, and then in all the bedrooms and your bedroom closets. So the code requires that every space, enclosed space, have a fire sprinkler. So you may have a tiny little closet, but it might need a fire sprinkler in there with a fire sprinkler head. So it all depends, but it's a good time to do it while you're building the house new. To retrofit later is kind of a headache, and then what happens is you have piping that are exposed and it doesn't look good. It's like, oh man, it looks ugly. I know some condos where they did a fire sprinkler retrofit and they got piping running in their common area hallways, on the ceiling, penetrating through. And then if you go into the unit, you see all these piping, you know, in the units, and it looks ugly. It doesn't look nice. But I'm thinking, I'd rather have it look like that than not have fire sprinklers at all. And some people build these little soffits, enclosures, and paint it and make it look really nice. And you can only do so far because you can't enclose the sprinkler head. Other buildings have recessed heads. So if you look at the entire living room, you don't see sprinkler heads hanging down because it's concealed in the ceiling, kind of thing. So it just all depends. If you want to do a design like that where it doesn't look as bad, then talk to your architect and engineer and have it designed. So was that the last question?
Looks like it, Lance. Yeah, I don't see any more on Facebook or on Zoom side. So I think you're good. You did a good job, even for us travelers. You know, give us some good scoop. So appreciate it.
By the way, I hope we can travel soon. I mean, this thing is getting ridiculous. So, okay. So once again, everybody that tuned in on Zoom and on Facebook Live, we appreciate. Please tune in again. We got more topics and hope you learned something. By the way, we've done a whole bunch of webinars already that's on demand. So go to our website, askbuildingexpert.now.site, and go look for the ones you are interested in, and please watch those. We got some on, we got one on contractor licensing, building code. We got one on spoiler repair, cast iron drain piping. I mean, there's a whole bunch. And you know, the best thing, it's free, right? So go ahead and enjoy it, use the information, and hope to see you at the next webinar and Facebook Live. Aloha. Martin, can you end the Zoom recording?
Sure can.